Welcome back to the Rock Vault, where the amps are always hot. Today, we're looking back at the songs that weren't just hits. They were goodbyes, moments when rock legends stared down the end and left their hearts echoing forever in sound. When Freddie Mercury stepped into the studio to record this, his body was failing, but his spirit was invincible. The Show Must Go On wasn't just another Queen anthem. It was his farewell, sung through pain, courage, and absolute defiance. The track opens like a theater curtain lifting one last time, synths rising, guitars slicing through the air, and Freddie's voice soaring with that impossible conviction only he could summon. Brian May wrote much of it, knowing Freddie's health was collapsing, unsure if he'd even be able to sing it. But Freddie did, in one take. You can hear the strength, the exhaustion, the willpower. It's not just a song. It's a man staring down mortality and refusing to let it silence him. For fans in the early 90s, hearing this after his passing felt like a message from beyond, a reminder that artistry, once born, never dies. It's a curtain call that still gives chills, proof that true rock never fades, even when the lights go out. Eric Clapton had written countless hits before this one, but none cut this deep. Tears in Heaven wasn't a song born in a studio. It was born from heartbreak. In 1991, Clapton lost his 4-year-old son, Connor, in a tragic accident. What followed wasn't just grief. It was a man trying to make sense of the unthinkable through melody. The song drifts like a lullaby, gentle acoustic chords, subtle percussion, and Clapton's weary voice trembling between pain and peace. It's one of rock's most vulnerable moments, when a guitar hero set aside the bravado and laid his soul bare. Released on Unplugged and later included on the Rush soundtrack, the stripped-down version connected with millions. Fans who grew up on Cream and Derek and the Dominoes suddenly saw Clapton as human, fragile, mourning, real. It wasn't just his goodbye to his son, it was his healing. To this day, hearing it brings silence to a crowd. It reminds us that even rock gods hurt, and that sometimes the most powerful songs aren't played to the masses, they're whispered to the heavens. By 1970, the world's greatest band was quietly falling apart. Let It Be wasn't just a single. It was a final prayer. Paul McCartney wrote it after dreaming of his late mother, who told him everything would be all right. That message became a goodbye not only to her, but to the Beatles themselves. The piano echoes like a church hymn, and George Harrison's solo feels like sunlight breaking through clouds. It's a song that carries both sorrow and serenity. One last moment where the band came together in harmony before walking separate paths. When fans first heard it, they didn't just hear McCartney. They heard the end of an era. The Beatles had defined the 60s, shaping the soundtracks of countless lives. Let It Be became a comforting message to everyone who grew up with them. Accept change, let go, and move forward. It still plays like a gentle farewell letter from the band that taught the world how to dream in vinyl. The Beatles' final message wasn't loud, it was peaceful, timeless, and full of grace.
So you think you can tell?
When Wish You Were Here came out, it wasn't just another concept song. It was a haunting message sent through static and space. Written for former bandmate Syd Barrett, whose mind had drifted far from the world they once shared, Pink Floyd's words carried the weight of absence. Roger Waters' lyrics ache with longing, while David Gilmour's delicate acoustic riff feels like a voice trying to reach a lost friend. You can almost hear the ghost of the 1960s echoing through every chord, a time of peace, rebellion, and endless creativity now fading into memory. The song opens with the sound of a detuned radio, as if we're trying to find the right frequency to bring someone back. For fans in '75, it hit like a mirror. Everyone knew someone who'd changed, burned out, drifted away, or disappeared into time. The beauty of Wish You Were Here. is that it speaks for anyone who's ever lost someone before they were really gone. Nearly 50 years later, it still sounds like a farewell whispered across the universe, a letter to a vanished friend, and maybe to an era of innocence itself.
Pass before my eyes a curiosity.
Kansas wasn't known for quiet moments. They were prog rock showmen with violins and guitar solos that shook arenas. But in 1977, Dust in the Wind stopped everything. It was simple, fragile, and painfully human. Written by Carrie Livgren after reading a book of poetry, the song came from a single acoustic riff his wife overheard and told him to keep. What he captured became one of the most reflective farewells in classic rock. The song strips away every layer. No drums, no distortion. Just finger-picked guitar, soft harmonies, and words that remind us how temporary we all are. For fans of the late 70s, it felt like a collective sigh, a quiet reflection as the decade of excess and experimentation began to fade. It wasn't about giving up. It was about acceptance. Dust in the Wind became a rock hymn for impermanence, a whispered goodbye to youth and illusion. Even now, it plays like a final truth, gentle, eternal, and unforgettable. In 1973, Bob Dylan wrote a song that sounded like a man's final breath. Knockin' on Heaven's Door wasn't crafted for radio fame. It was written for the film Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, yet the way Dylan delivered it made it feel larger than life. Sparse guitars, gentle percussion, and that fragile voice made it one of rock's most haunting farewells. It's a song about surrender, not defeat. A weary soul laying down his badge, ready to let go. Dylan's minimalist lyrics cut deeper than most epic ballads ever could. When it played in theaters, it stopped audiences cold. Fans in the 70s could feel that slow drift between life and whatever waits beyond. Even if you didn't know the movie, the music said everything. A man who'd seen too much, saying goodbye without fear, covered by countless rock legends since, Dylan's original still feels the most intimate, a final whisper on a dusty trail, echoing forever through time.
You know that it would be untrue. You know that I would be alive.
Few songs capture finality quite like The End. When The Doors released it in 1967, it felt less like a song and more like a descent, a haunting farewell to innocence, youth, and even sanity itself. Over 11 hypnotic minutes, Jim Morrison led listeners down a winding path of poetry, darkness, and self-revelation. It starts gentle, Robbie Krieger's guitar drifting like smoke, Ray Manzarek's organ shimmering behind it, before Morrison begins his final sermon. Every word feels improvised, like a man saying goodbye to everything he once understood. For fans of the late 60s, it was more than a psychedelic epic. It was a mirror reflecting a restless generation, closing one chapter as the summer of love turned to something darker. Decades later, it still feels cinematic, eternal, a haunting goodbye that bookended the wildest decade rock had ever known. Few songs capture the weight of existence like Pink Floyd's Time. Coming off the dark side of the moon, it's both a warning and a farewell, a reflection on how quickly life slips by while we're busy waiting for it to start. David Gilmour's haunting guitar tones and Nick Mason's pounding drums make the song feel like a pulse. Steady, unstoppable, running out. The lyrics hit like a truth we all recognize too late, that the days we think are endless eventually fade without a sound. When it played in the 70s, it wasn't just music, it was a revelation. Fans who'd grown up alongside the band suddenly found themselves facing adulthood, families, and the realization that youth doesn't last forever. Gilmour's solo still feels eternal, a cry against time itself, half elegy, half reminder. Time remains rock's most beautiful confrontation with mortality.
These mist-covered mountains.
By 1985, Dire Straits had conquered the world with precision and style. But Brothers in Arms was something different. It wasn't about fame or charts. It was a farewell, a soldier's goodbye, wrapped in one of the most haunting guitar tones ever recorded. Mark Knopfler's slow, clean Stratocaster lead drifts through the song like smoke over a battlefield, mourning the futility of war and the bonds it leaves behind. The production feels cinematic, spacious, echoing, eternal. It's less a performance and more a prayer. When it played in 1985, many listeners heard more than a war ballad. It became a universal goodbye to innocence, to youth, to the idealism of earlier decades. For fans who'd lived through the turmoil of the 60s and 70s, it was a sobering reflection on how far we'd come and what was lost along the way. Knopfler's final solo feels like a soul leaving the body, mournful, graceful, unforgettable.
Mama told me when I was young.
Few rock songs hit the soul like Simple Man. It wasn't written for fame. It was written as a letter. Ronnie Van Zant penned it as advice to live by, inspired by his mother's words. The song's slow, deliberate guitar chords and gentle southern drawl make it one of the most genuine goodbyes in rock. Not to a person, but to a way of life. In an era of rebellion and noise, Simple Man felt like stillness, a reminder to stay grounded when the world around you was speeding up. After the tragic plane crash that claimed Van Zant's life just a few years later, these lyrics took on a new weight. Fans who once sang along in cars and bars now heard them as a farewell from a man who never got to grow old. It remains a southern rock prayer, honest, humble, eternal, a goodbye wrapped in love and truth, carried forever by the ones who still listen.
No one knows what it's like to be the bad man.
When The Who released Behind Blue Eyes in 1971, it felt like Roger Daltrey was singing straight from the soul of every lost rock star. Originally written by Pete Townshend for a doomed rock opera called Lifehouse, the song became something else entirely. A confession, a farewell to innocence, and an anthem for isolation in the spotlight. The soft acoustic opening feels almost sacred, quiet, reflective, before the full band crashes in like bottled-up rage finally released. It's that contrast that makes the song timeless, the calm before the emotional storm. Fans of the early 70s felt the ache behind every word. For a generation that had grown up with Woodstock ideals and saw them crumble, this song felt like their internal dialogue, regret mixed with resilience. It's not a love song, but a goodbye to the myth of perfection, a rock god admitting he's human, flawed, and tired.
Climbed a mountain and I turned around.
Stevie Nicks wrote Landslide before Fleetwood Mac became a household name. A quiet moment of doubt before the storm of fame. Just her, a guitar, and the question every artist eventually faces: do I keep going or let it all go? The song's gentle acoustic picking and fragile vocal delivery make it feel like a whispered goodbye, not just to youth, but to everything that used to feel certain. There's no grand production, no wall of sound, only truth, and in that simplicity lies its power. When listeners first heard it in the mid-70s, it resonated like a personal letter. It was the sound of growing up, of moving on, of realizing that even rock stars feel time slipping through their fingers. Nearly 50 years later, it still feels like a farewell wrapped in grace, a gentle acceptance of life's changes, sung by a voice forever tied to the passage of time.
Did you ever wonder why we had to run for shelter with the broad?
From the Wall came one of Pink Floyd's quietest, yet most devastating farewells. Goodbye Blue Sky isn't just about war, it's about the death of innocence itself. David Gilmour's soft, echoing guitar and Roger Waters' fragile vocal create a soundscape that feels both dreamlike and doomed. A memory fading as the bombs begin to fall. The song opens with a child's voice, then slowly transforms into a eulogy for a world that will never be the same. For fans in 1979, it hit hard. A generation that had grown up in the shadow of conflict, now watching their ideals crack under the weight of reality. The skies that once symbolized freedom now carried fear. The song feels like a collective goodbye to peace, to childhood, to the blue sky itself. It's a chilling finale, not loud, not angry, just heartbreak set to melody. And there you have it, the final words of rock's greatest storytellers. Each of these songs was more than music. They were letters, goodbyes, and reflections from artists who poured their souls into the sound of forever. From the haunting quiet of Wish You Were Here to the fearless power of The Show Must Go On, these tracks remind us why rock will never die. It simply echoes on. Which of these farewells hits you the hardest? Tell us in the comments below. Until next time, keep the vinyl spinning. And never stop listening for the goodbyes hidden in the music.